Blitz Basic. That's what we're discussing today. Most of you probably have never heard of this programming language before, and you know, that's fair. It's pretty niche. It was my first programming language, and I'm really glad it was. It got me started off when I was probably 9, and it's helped a lot of people make their first 3D games back 30 years ago. It's mostly obsolete, except for the fact that it's 100% compatible with Windows 11, and it can be used, even in 2024, to produce Windows 95 compatible 3D video games in an incredibly easy way. Today we're going to talk about the history of this language just a little bit, and then I wrote a tutorial that I'm going to walk you all through so that if you're interested in making your very own 3D game for Windows 95, you should be able to in under an hour. Our story begins with Mark Sibley. One of the things that he's known for was creating the video game Gloom in 1995 for the Amiga. This is back during a period when the Amiga was rapidly falling out of the mainstream. Especially because the graphics system, the very unique graphics system, a lot of people did not believe that Doom was compatible with it. So this was sort of a tech demo almost to prove them wrong. Now, he's done a lot of other notable things with the Amiga platform. One of them is creating the Blitz Basic language, which debuted on that platform. One of the games that you may have heard of that was originally created with Blitz Basic is Worms by Team 17. The pre-release version was prototyped in Blitz Basic. Now, Blitz3D was created later. It's a dialect of Blitz Basic that was specifically meant for Microsoft Windows and was released in the early 2000s. Now, one of the games that you may have heard of that used Blitz3D to make was SCP Containment Breach. It was created with this language. So, now that I have sufficiently hyped this language up, how do you get started with it? Well, that's the fun part. It's currently available for free to download from their itch.io page. This is going to be in the description below if you want to check it out. You can also find it pretty easily just by Googling Blitz3D itch.io. The source code is also available if you wanted to check that out. You'll notice from the download page that there are 3 different versions. This is because, as of this year, Mark Sibley has returned to the project and he's looking to update Blitz Basic with a modern graphics engine. Now, if you want to produce a Windows 95 binary, obviously this is not the version you're going to want to use. But these versions are just about identical. So if you wanted to use a newer version to write your game in, and then use the older version to produce the binary, no problem with that. Today we're going to be working with the older binary just so I can kind of show you how it works. And for context, the code that I wrote to show you today is on GitHub right now. I'm going to put the link to that as well in the description so that if you'd like to download Blitz3D, the IDE, and you want to download my source code, you can follow along as I'm explaining how it works. Now, when you first open the IDE, you're going to notice this screen right here, and it has a bunch of links. Unfortunately, due to the way that Windows has evolved, this is using a browser element, these don't quite work, which is very unfortunate. With that said, you can sort of replicate the functionality of the command reference by going to your download page, right? Or you go to your downloads folder and navigate to Blitz3D, and you'll notice that within the help folder and the commands, you'll see these folders here. You can just kind of copy that and then paste it into a browser window, right? And now all of a sudden you've got yourself a command reference. So if I wanted to look up some more information about the exit command, I can now click on that link and it will give me all of the information I need to know on how to use it, as well as a short code sample. If you're really good at reverse engineering code, this is an excellent way to learn to program. I have a lot of respect for the people who wrote these documents, because if I was not trained to think like this, I probably would not have become the programmer I am today. However, if you'd like to, you can also play around with numerous samples that come with Blitz3D by default. Let's go through a couple of them. See, unfortunately, Blitz Basic 3D is very slow on my machine because I'm using the Windows 95 version. Just to sort of prove a point, if you're using an updated graphics model, it's going to be a lot faster. Let's see real quick. One of my favorite samples is this little Mario game. You can kind of navigate around a world. If you notice, it's got a very very PlayStation 2 looking kind of vibe. Anyway, but that's not what you're here for. I recommend downloading these and playing with them yourself. You're here to learn how I built my little example program, and I'll show you how it works by dragging the window over here. So the idea is that you've got this little cube that you can navigate in a 3D space, right? And the camera follows it. Now, the first thing you'll notice is that this has a different sort of looking syntax than a lot of other languages you might be familiar with, like JavaScript or C#, C++, even Java. Just because those are all C-type languages, and this is a basic dialect, which looks a lot more like Pascal. Now, it's very easy to get into. I strongly believe that if you're competent at coding in Unity, you're going to have a lot of fun with this. And right now, I'll show you one of the functions. I'm actually working on recreating a lot of Unity's functions inside of Blitz3D. I've just started that this week though, so it's going to take me some time to catch up, and I'll release a video about that later. Now you'll notice it has an include function here at the top. That will come in handy later for very large code bases. However, if you need to quickly jump to different functions or labels, because this is basic, you can use this little menu here at the right. You click on whatever function you want to jump to, and it lets you jump to it. Now, next you'll notice that I have this command here. This is what's creating the graphics mode. Next, you have to remember that this is working with old-fashioned DirectX functionality. A lot of this is obfuscated in modern code, but you've got a graphics buffer. It's literally a piece of memory, it's a bitmap, that's designed to represent your screen. And what I'm going to do here by setting the buffer and then using this flip command here at the bottom is I am basically saying that I am not writing to the same buffer that I'm showing. I put a buffer on screen, and then all of my graphics changes happen here in the back, and then when that's done rendering, I'm going to swap it. That way you don't see any screen tearing. This is this dual buffering technique is very old, but you do have to manually control this in Blitz Basic. Next up, very easy, I create a camera object dynamically by saying camera equals create camera. Position entity is a function you can use to put the camera somewhere. This is X, Y, and Z. Obviously, X is left and right, Z is in and out, and Y is up and down. So by doing this, I'm putting it in the center of the world, and I am placing it 5 units above the origin point, right? Next, I can create a light object right here. If I remember correctly, there's a certain number of lights you can actually create. This isn't like Unity where you can just put thousands of them out there. I think the max amount you can have is 3. If you want to have more than that, you might need to do baked lighting effects into textures or some other tomfoolery. Remember, very old language. Those are the conventions. Next up, I'm creating a plane that's going to act as the ground, and I'm giving it a texture, grass.jpg. It's a tiling grass texture I found. You can also find on my GitHub. Next, I'm going to create a cube. This little pound sign here at the end signifies that this variable is a float. So what I'm doing is I am creating a symbolic X, Y, and Z coordinate system so that I can place my cube in the system and then I can work with the variables. This isn't an object-oriented language, so remember that we don't necessarily have objects that you can attach functions to. The program has functions, the cube does not. So that's the reason I have to do it like this. And then I'm going to position my cube at my X, Y, and Z coordinates. Now this is a really important part. This is the game loop. The idea is that I'm going to, every time all of my functions run, I'm going to render everything to the screen and then start back over from the beginning. You can have multiple game loops per game, obviously, especially if you have like a menu system or different levels. But the idea is that for a very simple game like this, if you don't have a loop, then it's just going to run through all your functions and then immediately kill the game. Blitz Basic uses key codes. You can actually find these in the documentation. They're not hard to look up. The escape key is key code 1. So I've got that set up as a constant. So the idea is that while not, I've pressed the escape key. It's just going to continue until I get to W end, which stands for while end, and it's going to loop back up here to the top. I've done the same thing for my WASD keys, which is how you control the cube. A, and then, so this would be A, D, W, and S. And these are their respective key codes. So if key down, up is true, then I take the Z value and I set it equal to the Z value minus my move speed operator, which is currently set to 0.6. But you can adjust this. By making this higher, the cube will move faster. By making it lower, the cube will move slower. Same thing here. This controls vertical movement. It controls the in and out movement, while this controls my left and right. And then obviously once I have set the new variables, I want to position the cube where those variables are. So the idea is that I'm not like moving the cube, but instead I have these 3 variables to represent where the position of the cube ought to be that I can manipulate. And then I take this 3D cube and I place it on those coordinates so that you can see them. This is what Unity is doing behind the scenes. And then finally, point entity is a really nice helper function. Its job is to take the camera and position it towards the cube. That's why no matter where we move the cube, the camera's always looking at it. Now you want to do your 3D rendering before your 2D rendering for each loop. The reason for this is that we have this buffer, this little array of pixels, right, that represents what we want to put on the screen. We want to generate all of our 3D objects, and then all of the UI elements like text or whatnot, we want to make sure they are always on top of the 3D. So we do render world here to render all the 3D, and then I'm putting a little bit of text at location 0, 0, which is the top left corner, right? Cube position plus cube X plus cube Z. Flip, like I mentioned earlier, flips the buffers, and then this takes us back to the beginning. Now, if you liked this video, I'm only saying this because I want to see if the buttons below this video light up like YouTube says they will. Make sure to like, subscribe, and please comment below if you have any questions or if you have any opinions about Blitz Basic. You've heard of this before and you want to share your project, please let me know. If you find any problems, I also want to know about that. I will be keeping this repository up to date. And if you want to hear more tutorials about Blitz3D, I'm really seriously considering getting back into this language quite a bit and putting some of those together. I have a video game idea I want to make, and I don't know, it's a great fit. With that said, thank you very much for watching, and I hope all of y'all have an awesome day.